Hello.
Greetings. We're concluding the Epistle to the Trallians by Ignatius on his way to Rome to die, and he wants to give them a last warning. He's already done that through the rest of the letter. We're in the last 3 paragraphs now, so we want to read it first and then touch on a few issues that he won't let go of because he thinks they're that important.
Mm-hmm.
How does the church keep its unity? That's what's on his heart as he goes to his martyrdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's read it. We're going to read it from Lightfoot, right?
Right. So 11, 12, and 13. Flee therefore from these wicked offshoots that bear deadly fruit. If anyone even tastes it, he dies on the spot. These people are not the Father's planting. For if they were, they would appear as branches of the cross, and their fruit would be imperishable, the same cross by which he, through his sufferings, called you who are his members. The head, therefore, cannot be born without members, since God promised unity, which he himself is. I greet you from Smyrna, together with the churches of God, which are present with me, people who have refreshed me in every respect, physically as well as spiritually. My chains, which I carry around for the sake of Jesus Christ while praying that I might reach God, exhort you. Persevere in your unanimity and in prayer with one another. For it is right for each one of you, and especially the presbyters, to encourage the bishop, to the honor of the Father, and to the honor of Jesus Christ and of the apostles. I pray that you will listen to me in love, so that I shall not, by virtue of having written to you, be a witness against you. But also pray for me, for I need your love in the mercy of God, so that I may be reckoned worthy of the fate which I am eager to obtain, in order that I not be found disqualified. The love of the Smyrnians and Ephesians greet you. Remember in your prayers the church in Syria, of which I am not worthy to be considered a member, being as I am the very least of them. Farewell in Jesus Christ. Be subject to the bishop as to the commandment, and likewise to the presbytery. And love one another, each one of you, with an undivided heart. My spirit is dedicated to you, not only now, but also when I reach God. For I am still in danger, but the Father is faithful, and he will fulfill my prayer and yours in Jesus Christ. May we be found blameless in him.
We notice at the end of the letter that he's talking about the unity they have, and he mentions here 3 of the most important churches in the New Testament. In addition to his own church, Antioch, which is the big missionary center of the early church in the book of Acts. You have Ephesus and Smyrna mentioned. Remember, in the Revelation, we have references to Christ sending letters through John to the angels of the 7 churches, Ephesus, Smyrna being the first 2. And remember what glowing reports they had. There was a problem in Ephesus. It was about love. It wasn't about heresy. He commends them for standing up to the heretics and standing up for true doctrine. So what's late, therefore, is 95 A.D., and Christ giving this last message to the church. He's commending them. So this is fascinating to me because what we were told as Jehovah's Witnesses was that, well, Paul had told those same Ephesian elders, or their predecessors anyway, back in around the year 55, we're told.
About oppressive wolves?
He had told them about oppressive wolves coming in, rising up among them, who would not treat the flock tenderly. And here's the part you forget about. They would lead astray. That is, they would follow after themselves those that they were able to seduce, right? He doesn't say that those oppressive wolves would take over. And then we have, therefore, 40 years of history between Paul's message in Acts 20 and the 7 churches of Asia in Revelation, 95 AD. 40 years has gone by, and they're still holding fast to their earlier faith. So they haven't taken over, but they're still fighting heresies, according to Revelation chapter 2. But also, you've got the Smyrnans in here. And remember, Christ doesn't say anything about anything wrong with the Smyrnan church. They're martyrs for the sake of Christ. But in the first paragraph, that is 11, I couldn't help but think about a certain passage in Matthew when I read, "These men are not the planting of the Father," talking about the heretics who are separating themselves from the main church, the apostolic church. Remember, Christ had said in Matthew 15:13 that every tree that my Father did not plant will be uprooted. That seems to be what's on Ignatius's mind here. And then you realize, well, that gospel from which I'm quoting, Matthew, is associated with the Antioch congregation historically. So it makes perfect sense that Ignatius would be aware of it and is now using it as a kind of a law, a permanent law in the church, namely that any tree that wasn't actually planted by God will be uprooted. Which means, when you look back now 2,000 years, that the church we have is planted by God. Even if you don't like a lot of its aspects, you have to agree that the apostolic church has survived and even thrived in centuries afterward, and they were thriving then, according to Ignatius.
So God is doing planting, and he gives them Christ to give the message, and then Christ is called a shepherd to those people.
And he leaves the apostles.
And God says to Jesus, Jesus says, "You have given them to me, and no one can snatch them from my hand." But with this idea of a great apostasy setting right away, you're more or less saying God wasn't able to fulfill that, and Christ wasn't able to keep his sheep.
It's an attack.
It's an attack on God and Christ.
I think you use the word diss, and that's about appropriate. That you're dissing the. What is it you're dissing about Christ then? Is it his ability? Like he's not competent to keep his own sheep that he says he will keep?
And he'll be with them till the time of the end.
So either it's his competence or it's his care. That is, he's both incompetent, powerless to keep them, and careless because he can't do it if he can do. If he's physically able to do it, that is, he's spiritually powerful, more powerful than the devil. Well, then what's the reason he doesn't do it? According to your narrative, he's failed because the devil really took over the church almost instantly.
And I think this is the reason why Ignatius is writing for them to listen to. What's the last part? He says, "Be subject to the bishop and likewise to the presbytery." So the leaders. Why
cling to them? Because they're...
The church structure is what has been established to protect them, to do what Christ wanted, to keep them together, to nourish them, to shepherd them, to build them up and keep them in faith. And unity with each other.
Christ has said, when he's talking about himself being the vine, he says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me, and I in you." Well, he's quite willing to abide in us. And according to Ignatius, he's abiding right up until about 110 AD. And you think the apostasy is already set in by then. But in apostolic churches where Christ says, "I have appointed that your work or your fruit should abide," there's no room in that, which I view as a prediction, not just a principle, but a prediction of the future. There's going to be an abiding apostolic church. And according to this, the 3 biggest churches that we know of in the New Testament, the most successful at the end of the century, that is Antioch, Ephesus, and Smyrna, are all abiding at this point in the will of God.
In paragraph 12, it had the phrase, "them listening," to encourage the bishop and the presbyters, and it says, "To the honor of the Father, and to the honor of Jesus Christ, and of the apostles." So this is the means whereby they do honor God and Christ. And that is the characteristic of the early church. They were listening to the apostles. They were devoting themselves access to the teachings of the apostles. And they were setting up churches. I mean, Paul sets up churches.
Everywhere.
And you're saying he failed.
Yeah.
If you believe that an apostasy took over the church.
It's a shameful approach to church history and also to Scripture, because we have 55 years here covered just by what we just said, namely that from Paul saying the words about the oppressive wolves around 55 to 95, when Christ affirms that Ephesus and Smyrna are still well in his will and doing fine with heresy. And then another 15 years to Ignatius going through his martyrdom saying, you churches are doing fine, abide in, do what you're doing, and attach yourself and keep attached to your leaders, who after all were appointed by the apostles. What's our link?
We're linking Christian unity versus JW uniformity. A look at the Apostles' Creed. What united them?
Yeah, we saw last time that in paragraph 9, was it? The creed, as it were, is slightly longer than the middle of the Apostles' Creed, some 300 years later.
Yeah.
But there's nothing essential missing. And of course the center of the confession is Christ himself.
And the resurrection.
As it remained in the Apostles' Creed 300 years later. Yeah. See you next time.
Okay.